The big question, will GST 2.0 offset Donald Trump's tariffs? Make in India and make for India. Can that happen now? Will consumption and thereby investment get a real boost? Will the fiscal deficit rise as some fear? Will GST 2.0 really be a booster dose, the Diwali gift that the Prime Minister is promising? Joined by Nilesh Shah, Managing Director, Kotak Mahindra Asset Management, member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, Mukesh Bhutani, Managing Partner, BMR Legal, one of the country's leading indirect tax experts, Subhash Chandra Garg, former Finance Secretary, someone who was part of Arun Jaitley's team when GST was being brought in, K. Raghunathan, National Chairman, Association of Indian Entrepreneurs, Sumant Sinha, Founder, Chairman and CEO of Renew, also joining us. I want to get each and every one of you to respond to this major step. Government calling it a big Diwali bonus, opposition saying 8 years too late. Nilesh Shah, how do you see it? Do you believe it's too little too late, or do you believe it's come at the right time, will offset Trump's tariffs in particular?
So it is a step in the right direction. It will partially offset the tariff impact of America. More importantly, if we can find other countries for exports, combined, this can reduce significantly the adverse impact of US tariff. This GST reduction and slab rationalization will target many things. One, it will boost consumption with about 48,000 crore put in the pockets of consumers. Second, the hope will be that it will revive private investment as capacity utilization bumps up. Inflation will come down, which will give boost to RBI to pursue more liquidity and rate cuts. Finally, this tariffs will partially offset US adverse impact of tariff. And the fiscal slippage at about 7-8 basis point is something which is manageable. And if growth indeed recovers, then maybe we won't even have adverse impact on fiscal side. So this is one tir kai nishan.
One tir kai nishan, which is of course the slogan which the government is giving at the moment. But let's look at the practical aspect and get you in, Sumant Sinha. You head one of India's largest renewable energy companies. Do you believe that business confidence will return? I'm looking at the latest Business Today survey, which says that business confidence is among its lowest for the last 11 quarters. So will this now revive the business confidence that has seemingly been lacking for several quarters now?
Yeah, look, Rajdeep, I think this is a pretty game-changing move on the part of the government. And you can quibble over whether it should have been done earlier or later. The good news is it's happened. And I think from this point on, there will be a number of positive impacts. Just for example, if you take the power sector, the cost of all renewable energy is going to come down because GST for our sector has been reduced from 12% to 5%, which means lower power costs to end consumers, which means lower input costs, and therefore, hopefully, a reduction in the inflationary pressure, as Nilesh was saying as well. And so all of those are things that are going to result in positive momentum in the economy by bringing the cost of doing business down a little bit. It'll put more demand in the hands of consumers. And all of that is going to be a fiscal stimulus and a demand stimulus to revive the economy even further. I've used the word revive. I think really to grow the economy even further. 7.8% in Q1 is already very good numbers. And I think that we should be, fairly positive about the fact that this is now going to allow us to obviously deal with the impact of the Trump situation on the tariffs. But I think even leaving that aside, I think this is a phenomenal step forward to grow the economy faster and further. So I think
I just want to ask you this. A few years ago, the corporates got a corporate tax relief. That too, there was a presumption that they would then use the monies collected, the tax breaks to reinvest in the economy, to revive animal spirits. It never happened. Yes, COVID came a few months later. But the truth is that there has been a tepid demand. Are you telling me that all of that will change now?
I'm not saying that all of that will change, but I think that there is certainly going to be a significant incremental boost to the economy. Whether that results in 0.5% growth or 1% growth or more or less, hard to say. But keep in mind that without this, the economy would have been doing less well. And so even to your point around tax reductions in the earlier sort of years, perhaps the economy would have done less well if those had not happened. So it's great that the government is doing this. As I said, it's going to bring down a lot of the input costs, bring down inflation, allow the RBI to cut interest rates. So there are multiple benefits that we as an economy are going to get from getting all of this done. And I think the overall reduction in prices is going to be very positive for us. It'll allow us to
Okay.
pass on a lot of that benefit in the form of lower prices for, let's say, power in our
Okay.
case. So I think
So
from
you're
that
you're
standpoint,
saying that the benefits will be passed on to the consumer. Subhash Garg, as someone who was involved with the finance ministry when GST 1.0, if I may call it, was being rolled out, you were smiling when you were hearing Sumant Sinha. Why? Is there a sense of skepticism among some who are critics of this government's economic policies that, look, there is something more fundamentally wrong, which is why demand and business confidence is not picked up?
See, I think the contradiction which I see, let me first welcome the simplification, the reform in the rate structure, which is overdue. It's a continuum carried on from 1998. We have had enormously long journey to come to this stage, and this is part of that. So I welcome that. But
Could it
what
have been
I
done earlier? In your view, could it have been done earlier as someone who was involved?
Of course, it could have been done earlier. The government had also taken some of these steps even earlier, bringing the digitalization and a lot of other things. But it could have been done earlier. No doubt about this. But whenever it happened, even now, I think it's a welcome step towards that. But what I was a little skeptical is that if we believe that this 48,000 crore of the tax giveaway can create such a large consumption investment boost, then we are contradicting ourselves. Either the giveaway is much more than 48,000, or the impact would not be as we all are trying to make up. That is where I think we need to get the numbers right. In my judgment, the loss or the fiscal implication is about 2 lakh crore, not 48,000 crore. And that is what makes it a little more substantial as far as the economy is concerned in terms of consumption and all. Here, we're not, if we are looking at from the point of view of sort of countering the Trump tariff effect or something, by the way, exports attract no GST, and therefore exports effect is not there. The idea is perhaps that the exports which we will lose might be compensated by the domestic demand from this kind of reduction in the GST. That is where I think we need to
Right.
do little more careful calculations. Look at
So-
two items. Look at two items: the textile, which is being hit by the Trump tariffs, and the gems and jewelry, which is also being hit. We are a major exporter.
Right.
Now, on the textile, actually the GST has been increased for 2,500 rupees and all. So whatever was not exported, will it be consumed in the domestic demand because the GST is going up? So that is where there is no change in the gems and jewelry sector as far as the GST rates are concerned. So how
Okay.
it will play out?
So yeah, I think you make an interesting point there to see whether domestic demand will really get stimulated, which is the big challenge for the government and the hope, of course. But Mukesh Bhutani, I want to bring you in because there is a lot of people who have had to deal with GST. Inspector Raj have spoken to me about the cost of compliance, the real sheer volume of forms that had to be filled in for the longest time, the fact that there was almost punitive measures, even criminal measures against those who were seen not to follow GST, not treating it as a civil offense. Do you believe all of that will end with this simplification?
Well, Rajdeep, the most important change in this GST Council meeting has been the operationalization of the GST appellate tribunal. This, I think, will go a long way, not just to be able to address the audits and demands and disputes for the last 7 years, but also set out an element of precedence. One of the reasons the GST disputes had been high was the classification challenges. Now, classification challenges were there even in the erstwhile excise law and still continues to be there in the customs law as well. But that was largely because of the that you have now state revenue officials and federal revenue officials coming together under a common forum, and also because of the multiplicity of the compliance requirement. So, what
Right.
this GST Council has done has also simplified the process for filing the returns. So, you can
Right.
expect that this so called Inspector Raj that was prevalent will be tamed to some extent in the future as well. So I think GST tribunalization also is another move which ought to have come in at the time of the design stage way back in 2016, but unfortunately it was delayed. And one of the reasons for delay was also the constitutional aspect in relation to the appointment of members for the GST tribunal.
I want to bring in now K. Raghunathan. He's National Chairman, Association of Indian Entrepreneurs, deals with MSMEs primarily. Mr. Raghunathan, MSMEs are the ones who've had the maximum complaints, some believe, with GST, again, costs of compliance, and thereby they should be the ones presumably welcoming it. Do you welcome what the government has done or not?
Rajdeep, there are two aspects of beneficiaries. One is the consumers, the other one is the corporates. MSMEs have been left out. It is very disappointing that a 98,000 crore loss of revenue to the government with an additional 45,000 crore coming in from the sin tax, which is constituting 0.13% of the total GDP, will stimulate the consumer market. Let's understand this very clearly. There are beneficiaries which are consumers. Those who are day-to-day buying materials will benefit. Those who are retired and taking policies, whether life or medical, will stand to gain. But they are not going to increase their consumption because of the gain. They will use the gain to repay their loans. The personal loans are very high today in the market, and people are not able to make their ends meet. Now, coming to the MSME aspect of it, MSME, let's take only micro industries, tiny industries, and small traders. All the three of them will now have much more aggressive survival after these setbacks. Let me explain to you why. Now, earlier, the small entrepreneurs who made products were taxed at 5%. Now, the big players have also been equalized to the 5%. Most of the products will now compete with the small localized makers' products. And thereby, corporates will get the benefit in totality in every aspect of it.
No, Raghunathan, for the longest, no, 1 minute, 1 minute. You're saying that you will have to compete with the big players who will get the same benefits, but for the longest time you wanted a rationalization of the tax structure. The government does it, and you're yet complaining.
There are three aspects of the GST, Rajdeep. First is the tax structure. The second is the compliance aspects. And the third is, after the notice is served, how redressal of the problem is. I'm limiting myself to the tiny industries and micro enterprises. Now, the government should have done increase of the threshold limit from 40 lakhs for manufacturer, 20 lakhs for service industries to 1 crore and 50 lakhs respectively. If they had done that, then most of the small players would have been away from the clutches of the GST compliances aspect. You and I read the UPI went very high in Bangalore. Several traders were served with the GST notices. Even today in Coimbatore, 23,000 GST notices have been served. The associations have taken out a separate procession to the collector and gave them the referendum. We are inducing fear among the entrepreneurs.
You're saying you needed a greater cushion for the MSMEs so that they were given, they were not put through what you're calling a punitive compliance regime. Nilesh Shah, you want to respond to what you're hearing? Ultimately, the aim will have to be also to revive MSMEs. They are the ones who perhaps need to really take the economy to the next level. That's been the challenge for this government in many ways. The big players are in any case have already had their windfall corporate tax breaks a few years ago.
So Rajdeep, we have to support competitive industries. We cannot support inefficient industries. Suppose if our IT services was dominated by small and medium enterprises, do you think we would have got $200 billion of exports? Do you think we would have created 10% of GDP? If our pharma companies were dominated by small and medium enterprises, do you think we would have become supplier of 40% of generic medicine to US? On the other hand, you can go and see in Morbi how small tiles manufacturer have outperformed Chinese imports. They are exporting now against Chinese exports in Middle East. They are going to Europe. So we have to support all those MSMEs and large players who are competitive. People who want to take, shadow under inefficiencies and uncompetitiveness, who wants to shortchange rules and regulation, we should not support at all. Now, the point raised in simplifying processes of GST is very important. We have put enormous compliance burden on our entrepreneurs. And there are so many regulations, like you have to keep spittoons in your factory. अंग्रेज चले गए, spittoons हमारे लिए छोड़ के चले गए. We have a rule which says that if your canteen cook's health record is not maintained for 3 years, you will be put behind the bar. I mean, canteen cook's health record, what is the definition? आपने ECG रखा तो वो, 2D echo मांगेगा, 2D echo रखा तो ECG मांगेगा. So is there a need to simplify processes and empower our entrepreneurs? Undoubtedly, yes. But we must support only those entrepreneurs who are competitive, not those entrepreneurs who are taking advantage of shortcuts.
I take your point, Nilesh, but do you believe that this will lead to an ease of doing business? That's the question. There's one point that it will benefit consumers. It's a Diwali gift. It's a Diwali bonanza. But the truth of the matter is, how do you also ensure ease of doing business to really trigger, in a way, the animal spirits of the economy?
So
precisely for the
reduce
reason you're saying, the
compliance
kind of
burden.
outdated laws and reduce the compliance burden, for example.
Absolutely. I mean, all these laws, if a fund manager like me know, I'm sure industrialist would have presented to the government. Why is government not removing it?
Okay. Subhash Garg, is the problem still therefore the resistance at different levels? What I find amazing is that it's only now that the government has woken up, for example, on health and life insurance, which for the longest time, several people were saying, why do you need a GST on health and life insurance? Is the government, did it require the Trump tariffs in a way for the government to wake up to this?
I don't really think that it is the Trump tariffs which is behind the GST rejig. I think
So why was health and life insurance put in the first place at 18%? It should have been 0% right at the very outset.
Obviously, this has been a mistake. This health insurance and life insurance is not required to be taxed at 18%. It should have been brought much earlier, but it has been done now because of Trump tariff is what I disagree.
Right.
I think the biggest motivation for this reform-based kind of giveaway of a very large amount is actually the populist, and probably the Bihar elections are there, which is guiding it. You see what has
But that
happened.
is being unusually cynical. The government says we've been holding 50, 60 meetings for the last 6-8 months. You're saying it's only with an eye to Bihar election. Seems a little bit cynical, isn't it?
You may say so. Why does the 1 lakh crore income tax benefit come few days before Delhi election? Why does the GST reform or GST giveaway or Diwali gift comes a couple of months before the Bihar election? Why is it that if rationalization is to be done, let us say, of the rate, why is it that only the larger rates are getting towards the lower rates?
Right.
Where is the revenue neutral aspect of it? Reform should actually result into a rationalization, simplification, reform, but of a structure where you don't lose. If you are actually giving away tax revenue in a situation where your tax revenues are actually at very big threat. I don't know whether you saw July number of the CGA suggests that income tax receipts were about 35% lower than the previous year. The total
Okay, let's-
gross receipts of the government were 11% lower than the previous year. There is a very large giveaway which is already happening. And on top of that, if you further give away the GST revenue, it's not reform in that sense. Reform should also lead to higher fiscal revenues.
Okay,
Besides-
Mr. Garg, I take your point that, but either way, the fact is, I think there is a general consensus here. Well, Mr. Raghunathan, I'll give you 30 seconds. Quickly respond. You heard from Nilesh Shah. He says uncompetitive businesses or businesses that cut corners will not get breaks.
And nobody cuts corner. It's only the survival, and nobody deliberately or wantedly cuts corner. But Rajdeep, what I wanted to insist upon is the government should not think that having come out of the GST reform, they have touched the peak of it, and this everything else will automatically go. The export setback from the US tariff is entirely a different ballgame. It affects a sector which does not come under the purview of GST at all, unless otherwise they get their refund or their input tax credit. So therefore, a separate stimulus has to be announced. Already
Okay.
we are late. It has to be announced immediately for the thousands of crores of stocks which are lying
Okay.
unsold. The packing credit
Let me-
needs to be extended to them. The EMIs have to be eased out to them. The additional
So
working
you're
capital
asking for a
has to be given to
separate
the
package,
people.
separate package for MSMEs, which would make it a triple dhamaka in that sense around Diwali. We'll wait and see whether that happens. That's also not really reforms. That's really, again, asking for benefits, which will not really result in the kind of long-term reform we need. But I appreciate my guests joining me here on our talking point. It's a rare day when there is a broad consensus, even though there are concerns on specific issues that still remain. I thank you all very much for joining us on that GST debate.